By the time my coffee machine beeped, my guest's car was already airborne. It was 6:07 a.m., a Tuesday that still felt like night. The tow truck's winch whined in the cool air, and my friend Luis's blue sedan floated a few inches above the asphalt, front wheels hugged by a metal yoke like a trap that had learned to purr. In front of it stood HOA Karen, blazer, sunglasses before sunrise, clipboard held like a badge, directing the driver with 2 fingers as if she were guiding an airplane to a gate. "Hold on!" I shouted, barefoot on the concrete. "What are you doing? He's parked on the street!" The tow driver didn't look at me. He looked at Karen. Karen lifted her chin. "This is an exclusive resident zone," she said. "No overnight parking for guests. Rule 8.4. I blinked at the empty curb, the regular grey of public right-of-way with no paint, no posted signs, no stenciled words. "There are no signs," I said. "And this isn't your driveway. It's a city street." She tapped her clipboard. "Community standards are posted on the website." Luis opened my front door behind me, hair a mess, shirt inside out. "Is that my car?" he asked, the way you ask if the thunder you heard was really thunder. The tow driver ratcheted the strap one more click, a little metal syllable that sounded like the end of negotiation. "Sir, take it up with your association," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "I got a work order." "From the city?" I asked. "From the HOA," he said. I took a breath that tasted like asphalt and new day. "You can't tow from a public street on an HOA order," I said. "Only the city can do that, or a property owner from private property. This is neither." Karen smiled in the way only someone fully confident in a small, wrong power can smile. "We regulate parking," she said. "Overnight street parking has been a problem for months. We're done with warnings." The tow truck nudged forward a foot, the sedan squeaking into resignation. Luis let out a small noise I've only ever heard in hospitals, somewhere between a question and a surrender. "Stop," I said, stepping in front of the truck. My voice surprised even me. "Don't move that vehicle another inch." The driver drifted his foot off the accelerator and looked again at Karen. She kept her eyes on me. "Sir," she said, "if you obstruct, we will call the sheriff." "You do that," I said, "and I'll call parking enforcement and ask them why you're towing from their road." We stared at each other for a count of 5. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler coughed awake. A kid's bicycle glinted in a yard, a small blue promise of afternoon. The tow driver sighed in the way a man sighs when he realizes his day has become paperwork. I stepped back and dialed the city's non-emergency line for parking and right-of-way. The dispatcher sounded like she'd had coffee and experience. I gave the address, described the tow in progress, described the absence of any posted restriction. "We'll send an officer," she said. "Don't let them leave." "Working on it," I said. Karen made a small face, the kind people make when they step on a Lego of their own design. "We've had multiple complaints," she said, voice cooling. "Trailers, guests, people blocking driveways. And the city has laws for that," I said. "But you don't get to invent a no parking zone and then hire a truck to enforce it." Luis drifted up beside me, one shoe on. "I can move it," he said, voice hopeful and miserable. Karen shook her head. "Once it's hooked, it's a tow," she said. "Policy." "What policy?" I asked. She lifted the clipboard again. "HOA policy." "On a city street," I said. We waited. The tow driver sat in his cab, hands at 10 and 2 like a teenager in a driving test. Karen paced the exact length of my lawn, heels ticking like a metronome set to self-importance. Neighbors peered through blinds. 2 wandered out with mugs, pretending to check their sprinklers. The sun nudged its shoulder over the roofs, and the cul-de-sac caught light like a stage. The white city sedan turned the corner at 6:21. The parking officer, Rosa, stepped out with a tablet and a calm that could sell umbrellas in a desert. She took in the truck, the car, the clipboard, and the barefoot neighbor trio in a single sweep. "Morning," she said. "Who authorized this tow?" Karen held up the work order like a saint displaying a relic. "The Cypress Bend Homeowners Association," she said. "Rule 8.4, no guest parking overnight." Rosa didn't look at the paper. She looked at the curb. Then she looked at the nearest signpost, which bore only a small notice about a 5K last spring. She touched the curb with her shoe, then took a photo of the blank concrete as if it were a suspect. "This is a public right-of-way," she said, tapping her tablet. "There are no posted restrictions. The city has not designated this as a permit zone. We do not enforce HOA rules on city streets, and HOAs do not have authority to tow from them." The tow driver sagged an inch. Karen brightened in defiance. "We've had issues," she repeated. "The board voted. We pay assessments to keep order." Rosa kept her voice even. "You can regulate private common areas, lots, garages, alleys owned by the association. Streets dedicated to the city are our jurisdiction. If this car isn't blocking a driveway, a hydrant or a fire lane, it is legally parked." She walked the distance between bumper and driveway. "Plenty of room," she murmured, more to her tape measure than to us. She looked at Luis's car and then at the driver. "Release it." The driver rubbed his jaw. "It's hooked," he said, half apology, half plea. "Release it," she said again, and this time it was official in the way gravity is official. He sighed and set the sedan back on the ground with the mechanical exhale of a bigger animal giving up. The straps fell away with a little shiver. Luis put both hands on the roof as if to comfort Tin. Karen tried one last time. "We posted the policy online," she said. "Residents know." "Visitors don't live online," I said. Rosa glanced at me with the ghost of a smile, then turned back to Karen. "Without posted city signage, it's not enforceable. If you have a chronic problem with abandoned vehicles or long-term storage, file for a residential permit zone or request time-limited signs. That process goes through the city's traffic engineer, not your board. Until then, you can't tow from the street." Karen's sunglasses made a slow trip from her nose to her hair. Without them, she looked smaller, or just more human. "We're trying to maintain standards," she said. "It's getting out of hand." "Standards are good," Rosa said. "A jurisdiction matters more." She typed for a minute, fingers quick and quiet, then handed the tow driver a printed notice from a small thermal printer that had probably seen things. "This is a warning for an unauthorized tow from public right-of-way. Next time, it's a citation. If you tow off the street in this city, you need a police or parking authorization number. Or you need to be on private property with the property owner's request and the required signage." The driver nodded, grateful to be told what to do. "Wasn't trying to be a cowboy," he said. "They said it was a private lane." Rosa tilted her head at the curb. "It's not." Luis backed his car into my driveway, hands shaking, like he might drive it into the kitchen just to feel safe. He turned off the engine and sat with his forehead on the steering wheel for a count of 3. Karen cleared her throat. "We will address this at the next board meeting," she said, words stacked into a defensive wall. "In the meantime, we expect residents to respect quiet hours and avoid street clutter." "Respect goes both ways," I said. "So do laws." She didn't answer. The tow truck pulled away with that slow, heavy dignity large vehicles adopt when they're embarrassed. Rosa tapped her tablet, nodded to me, and left us with a street that looked exactly the same as it had at 6:06, except for the way our shoulders sat. I made more coffee. Luis stared at his cup like the future might be at the bottom. At noon, the HOA emailed a notice titled "Parking Clarification." It said the board would continue enforcing community standards and work with our vendor to ensure compliance. It also said, almost as an aside, that residents are reminded that guests should park in driveways when possible. No apology, no correction. I forwarded the email to Marisol, the city's neighborhood liaison, along with a short note. "If they try this again, what should we do?" She called me back instead of replying. "Document everything," she said. "Photos of the curb, the absence of signs, plate numbers on the tow truck, names if you have them. If you get towed from a public street, Call us immediately. We'll come, and please show up at that board meeting." The meeting was Tuesday. Clubhouse, cold air, long table, a print of sailboats on a lake our neighborhood didn't have. Karen sat in the center like a lighthouse that had never seen a storm. Brent, who runs a landscaping company and believes trucks are a political philosophy, sat to her right. Leah, who managed to teach both middle school science and adults how to be decent, sat to her left. They let me speak first. I kept it brief. "The street is public. There were no signs. The city said no. Please stop towing from places you don't own." Luis spoke after me. He doesn't do speeches. He said, "My wife works night shift. We brought our kids over for dinner. We parked. At 6 in the morning my car was already leaving. That's not a standard. That's a scare tactic." Priya from the corner house brought a printout from the city's GIS site. She had highlighted our block bright yellow. "Dedicated to the city," she said, tapping the legend, "has been for years." Brent leaned back. "We have to keep the street clear," he said. "Trash trucks, emergency vehicles." Rosa had come in plain clothes and sat near the back, hands folded. When the room turned like a compass needle, she stood. "If emergency access is blocked, call us. We'll ticket, tow, or both. But you can't redeclare a public street an HOA lane because cones look nice there." Leah made a note and looked at Karen. The room waited the way rooms do when they know the person in the middle will either widen the bridge or blow it up. Karen touched the edge of her clipboard once, lightly, as if determining whether it could still be a shield. "We have been dealing with trailers, RVs, and cars that don't move," she said. "Residents complain. People say they can't see backing out. We tried courtesy notices, we tried emails." "Then ask the city for time limits," Leah said. 2-hour parking, no overnight on one side, whatever the engineer says is safe. Put up posted signs. But until then, no more tows from the street." Brent started to protest. Leah lifted one finger, the universal signal of teacher patience, about to become teacher firm. He stopped. Karen looked at Rosa. "If we file for signs," she asked, "how long?" "Depends on the study," Rosa said. "You'll need buy-in from residents, site distance measurements, crash data. It's not overnight, but it's the way." Karen nodded once. "Motion to suspend towing from public streets," Leah said before anyone could drift. "Second," I heard from somewhere surprising, Ray, the retired firefighter who never speaks unless a building is actually burning. The motion carried. Brent voted no. Karen paused, then voted yes, and the room let out a breath we hadn't realized it was holding. 2 days later, a letter from the city arrived addressed to Cypress Bend HOA ATN president. It cited ordinance numbers, the way a well-placed ladder finds a window. It reminded the association that towing from public right-of-way requires authorization by a law enforcement or parking official, and that private entities may not enforce parking restrictions on public streets absent posted signage installed by the city. It ended with, "We look forward to working with you on lawful solutions." Luis framed a copy and put it on his fridge, next to a crayon drawing of a whale. The towing company got a formal citation and a fine. The driver came by a week later and apologized in person. "They told me it was a private lane," he said, scratching his neck. "Won't happen again." On Saturday, we held a parking workshop at the clubhouse because that's who we had become, a place that writes things down instead of stewing. Rosa explained how signage works. Marisol talked about permit zones and the difference between wish and law. Leah handed out a one-pager titled Streets, Signs and Sanity. It said in polite bullet points that the HOA can ask, the city can order, and residents can help by not acting like the curb is a throne. Karen came. She didn't talk much. She listened, which is a kind of talking if you count carefully. When it was over, she stood at the door and thanked Rosa and Marisol by name, which is a kind of apology if you have been to enough meetings. The cones disappeared from in front of Karen's house. The mysterious residents-only board vanished from the corner by the pool. The compliance cart stopped idling at dawn, like a white mosquito with authority issues. Life slid back into the quiet rattle of sprinklers and coffee and kids with scooters. A month later, the board posted a new parking policy. It was 2 pages, not 7. It said, "City first." It said, "The HOA does not regulate public streets. We defer to city ordinances and posted signs." It said, "Towing may occur from private HOA common areas only when legally posted and after notice, except for emergencies." It said, "If you have a chronic parking issue, call the city. Don't escalate." And it said, "Guests are welcome. Please use driveways when possible, be considerate of neighbors' sightlines, and avoid blocking mailboxes." The sun rose and set. Luis came back with his family and parked in my driveway out of habit. I told him to put it on the street just to prove we could. He did. We ate pancakes. We laughed about his inside-out shirt and my heroic barefoot sprint. We watched a city truck go by, a small white rectangle ferrying a person who knows where authority ends and help begins. Sometimes, when I take the trash out late and the street shines under the moon like a brand new thing, I think about that moment when my friend's car hung in the air and a clipboard tried to outrank a curb. I think about how easy it is to mistake control for care. And I think about how a single sentence can pull you back from that mistake. The street is public. That's all it took. That, and a woman in a city polo with a tablet and a spine, and a room of neighbors who chose the law that belongs to everyone over the rule that flatters a few. Now, when I see Karen on her morning walk, she lifts a hand. She still loves clipboards. She's learning to love maps. That's a start.